I would like to call the policy committee meeting to order. The first thing we will do is that we will make sure we have a quorum for our meeting today. And we have here present in the building with us, Lank and Dean and Zach. And I'm here, so that makes a quorum, but we do need to know if Sharonda is on Zoom. She's on. Okay, so we have all the committee members here. I think that's the first time we've done that in a good long time. So thank you, committee members, and all the rest of you who are here in the audience. At this time, we have several policies on the agenda that we will be looking at this evening. Before we do that, though, I need a motion to approve the minutes if there are no corrections.
I make a motion.
Second.
It's been moved by Dean, Mr. Edwards, excuse me, and
You're good.
seconded by Mr. Dunn that we approve the minutes as presented. If there are no corrections or additions, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is a list of policies for us to look at this afternoon. The first policy we'll look at is 4050. Policy number 4050. Who's taking care of that?
Be me.
Dr. Farrell.
So policy 4050 is the children of military families. And in this policy, in accordance with the new state law, it expands the scope of the policy to provide rights to children in the household of an inactive member of the National Guard or Reserve when the children transfer school systems because an inactive member is required to move to perform military services or responsibilities. So it adds clarifying language in the first paragraph of section B. It also changes the title there. And again, that clarifying language speaks to if a person who is inactive has to perform duties and children having to move school systems. Let me make sure. I think that's there. Got the toggle. I didn't bring my glasses and it's hard for me to see.
I would like for mine, and I would be great.
Yeah. Oh no, you won't get those back on your face.
It gets worse.
No, this speaks to the board adopting the policies and the change in the general statutes there in section B. So I apologize for that. But if we move a little further, looking under B, there is a change in the title there, as you can see, the title change. Also under number 1, the general statute was added. You can see there. If you go to letter B, under the definitions, this part, there was added and it defines who's considered the children of military families.
And the policies that I'm looking at, and I think it would be the same for all of us, we don't have that highlighted information. Am I in the right policy, 4050?
Enable editing.
I'm in simply. Yeah,
Click that. The copy I got. Yeah, now good. There it went.
no. Still don't
It's
have it.
not the red line. So it's
Oh.
Look at it.
We got you.
There.
Okay, now, okay, thank you.
Well,
So the inactive members were added to the definition. As if you scroll down, Mr. McQueen, to letter F. It's right there. So inactive members were added there. And as you can see, once inactive member was put in, then everything following that in terms of the letters have shifted and made a change. And then we have under number 2, those whom adopt the policies and procedures apply, and number 3, to whom adopt the policies and procedures do not apply. Those were deleted, and then resolution of issues were changed to number 2. Can you scroll back up just a little bit, Mr. McQueen? Thank you, sir. Yes, so 2 and 3 there were deleted, and number 2 was replaced with resolution of issues. And then we have our legal reference. There was an update there. And there was also an update in the cross-reference. I think you're right there, yes. So is there any question about any of the wording?
Are there questions?
I didn't have any question on the wording, and I think I've asked this when we've looked at this policy before. Are we impacted much by this from what our
Not much.
families look like, or would be become more so now that it does fall inactive?
Yes, as you said, Mr. Smith, it could, but to my knowledge, we're not impacted much by having to refer to this policy. But certainly there are people who live in this area who serves in some form of the military, or who have family members who come here. And if they do, our schools are aware of the policies, and they just make sure that the policies are followed. But as far as something rising to my level where we have to get involved, it just hasn't been an issue. And I hope I answered your question.
Are there other questions? Thank you, sir. The next policy is 4100.
It's going to be me as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. McQueen. So this one adds 4100's age requirement for initial entry, and it adds information about the entitlement to initial entry for children of military families under the Interstate Compact on Educational Opportunity for Military Children. And if you look here, it's added some verbiage reflecting referencing policy 4050. Then there's our legal references, an update there and the cross-reference.
Are there any questions for Dr. Farrell? Okay. The next policy is 4110. Is that you too?
For the 110, that it's this grant.
Good evening. For policy 4110, the immunization and health requirements, what this policy does, we actually did this in the spring where we added in Okay, say it for me. Pneumococcal, yeah, okay. So for I, so what this does is just clarifies that vaccine is required only for initial entry. So it just kind of added that clarifying for children entering school before the age of 5. And then on section B, it took out all kindergarten students beginning with 16, 17, because the health assessments and vision screenings are required for all students entering the public school system for the first time, regardless of what grade they're in. And then Dr. Farah mentioned about the military families policy. And so section E just updates it just required some updates to align with the new general statute. And it removed the reference to the interstate commission because they do not have a rule that's different than this one. They have not adopted one or don't foresee adopting one. And then at the very end, just updated the legal reference.
Are there questions?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Ms.
Well-
Davis?
What's the common term for the pneumococcal?
Phone a friend.
Is it a cold? Is it a measles? Is it a flu? What is it?
Is like. And also along with the HIB, which was one that they gave, which pretty much eliminated. Ear infections that's caused by a certain virus. In office. So it's just. I don't think we'll ever see any more immunizations added to this list, which you never know. It's just another file.
How many other school districts are doing this?
It's a requirement.
Who's required?
DHHS, I believe the immunization branch and DHHS. We do have some families who get medical or religious exemptions from immunizations, and there's a form they fill out and turn into the school.
But that's not spelled out in policy.
It-
Good.
I
didn't see
believe it's
it.
in another, I don't think it is. It's in the legal reference.
I'm just making sure for those that are out there in the world who don't know what all these really cool names are, that this isn't a really nice way of saying, or a different way of saying this is a COVID vaccine.
No, no,
Yes.
sir.
Okay. Just making sure.
Good question.
All right, are there
Yeah.
other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next policy is policy number 4130. Yeah,
I got my computer. 4130 is discretionary admission. It updates the language throughout the policy to acknowledge that the board, rather than the superintendent, decides whether to admit non-domicile students. And that means students who do not live in our schools' attendance zones. So that would be students who were living in another county. And so if you look at the very first paragraph at the very top of the policy, that part was added. And then going down to the second part, the second paragraph there, you can see there's a sentence. And then you see the deletion of the paragraph that was initially there. If you look under A, admission criteria, the board may choose to admit. So that's a change where in the past it spoke to the superintendent or his designee. And it also under number 1 here talks about the parent, legal guardian, or the legal custodian must or should put in writing, explain in writing why they want their child to attend school in this district where they're not domiciled. Now, the board, according to the policy here, does not have to accept that. There has to be compelling specific circumstances indicating that the student should attend school in this school system. And again, the board would make that decision or have the superintendent come up with a process and where by means the board makes a final decision on that, which in our situation, the board does anyway, because the board gets our transfer request and votes on it monthly.
And the cost for enrolling in our system as a transfer student, where is that information found?
That is in our policy that I cannot think of the policy number, but it's a
So it
policy
is in another
Mhm.
policy.
that speaks to
Intuition.
tuition.
It's
Okay.
policy 4135, Leon. Just
Thank you.
apologize for interrupting.
No, thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there other questions?
Let me just make sure I cover it all.
Okay,
And then you can see here in number 6, again, it speaks about the parent and what their role would be in requesting. I wanted to speak to that one because it talks about appeals. So if you scroll down, Ms. McQueen, to number 2. So you can see here that it removed the word appeals and it put renewals. It deleted that wording under appeals as well. And in the renewal, it just simply says that an application must be submitted each subsequent school year and in which admission is desired. And that's very similar to what we do anyway with our transfer process. Even if a person was approved the previous year, they still have to submit in writing through our process a request for transfer for the following year. And then you can see there was the addition of letter C, released to another school system, which is a process that we already have in place that we do anyway. If a student is living in another school district and they're requesting to transfer to our school district and we accept that student, the student must present, or the parent must present information where their school system have released them to attend school here. I think I'm done, Ms. Bolt.
all right. Other questions?
Just for clarity,
Mhm.
in all of this, this is just for solely for somebody coming from, say, Halifax to Nash or from Edgecombe to Nash, not any transfers within our own system, correct?
I don't believe this one. Yeah, this is when an individual is coming into our school district. Yes, it's not someone who's already living here and transfer or wanting to transfer to another school.
All right. Are there other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just have one, under the renewals
Mhm.
where it states the academics, it must be in good standing in terms of academics, attendance and discipline. Is
Mhm.
that defined somewhere?
For renewal of admission in subsequent school years, the student must continue to meet all
Attendance and discipline.
must be in good standing terms of discipline for renewal admission. So it's saying there, if we approve a student and then that student wants to renew, then that they had to have been in good standing with the things that you have named. And that is something that we speak to parents, families about. I don't believe it's in writing in the letter that goes out to our families, when a person is approved, but we do speak to them that they must be continuing good academic behavior and attendance standard to remain at the school. We have a procedure that we use with administrators that if there is a student who has been allowed to transfer, that they have to have the same thing in place. It looks like here, and Lindsay, you can help me with this, but it looks like here it is saying that this particular policy, the student, we have to wait until the renewal process and then assess whether they have been in good academic behavior discipline standards.
So that's what I was asking, if those three criteria are defined somewhere. So it's not ambiguous, you know what I'm saying?
It's-
Like, is it 10 days? Is it, I'm just for example, is it 50 days? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's-
Discipline, a fight, or?
It's not defined in
Okay.
any of our policies. What we have used as good academic standard is an individual passing their classes. For instance, if it's a high school kid and they've passed 3 out of 4, I don't know that we've said in the past that a child could not come back to that school because they're not in good academic standards. But if they're failing 2 or more, then in my mind, that's not a student making good academic standard. If it's a student who has a certain number of discipline referrals that we think is just not something that should be, in my opinion, if you have more than 5 or 6 discipline referrals, and I'm not talking about for something like a tardy, but I'm talking about discipline situation, that's not a student who's in a good behavior standards. So it would be something that the principal, in most cases, they call me and we have a conversation about it. But this part right here is going to be new. So we're going to have to look at this, make some adjustments because we have not done this per se before outside of a person paying tuition. And when they have paid tuition, these things were explained.
All right, are there other questions? All right, then the next policy is 4155.
Ms. Bullock, before we move on, can I have a question? Lindsay, how is this going to impact our tuition pay?
In what way? Can you be more specific?
Will we still be able to continue with tuition pay?
So tuition pay is governed by a different policy completely. So if you scroll down to the bottom of this policy, the tuition payment is governed by policy 4135. So I don't believe that the changes here are going to impact that.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, sir. Who's doing policy 4155? All right.
Good afternoon. I have policy 4155, which is assignment to classes. So the changes start under section B, number 2, which is page 2. And it's still speaking to military families. It clarifies some of the language and it adds the general statute 115C-407.12. But basically what it says is that the entitlement of initial entry for military families would fall under the interstate compact for military children. It is a required, and on page 3, the legal reference has been updated. Are there any questions?
Other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Only to ask, is that a substantial change? Does it, I guess because of what it is, not so much the length of what it is, it becomes a.
Yeah.
And that's just how we have our
Yeah.
policy.
Lindsay, you helped me, but I think it was listed under a substantive change.
It was.
It is.
Mhm.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I wasn't entirely sure. It's the way that the School Boards Association sends them to us. They sort of send them broken out that way, and this one seems like a fairly minor change.
No problem.
Thank you, ma'am. Policy 4220.
Good evening. Policy 40, excuse me. Policy 4220 regards student accident insurance. This policy the current policy has been modified now to reflect two sections, Section A, accident insurance, and Section B, catastrophic insurance. The changes made in Section A, paragraph 2 concern the financial responsibility for the accident insurance premiums. The words "or guardian" have been added to, I believe it's line 2, where it states the student and or parent or guardian, excuse me, line 1, between the student and or parent or guardian and the insurance company, meaning that the accident insurance is an agreement between the insurance company and the student and or parent or guardian. Or guardian was the change that's been added. Also on line 2, sentence has been added where it states the student and or parent or guardian is responsible for payment of the accident insurance premiums, added for clarification so that it's understood who's to pay for it. Catastrophic insurance in Section B has been added, and it states the board will purchase catastrophic insurance to cover students and school system employees while they are participating in or responsible for supervising high school interscholastic athletic activities, including school supervised practices, game-related activities, and related travel. I'm going to have to ask Lindsay a question. The statute indicates high school, but we've typically purchased catastrophic insurance for middle and high school. So should this, where it says for supervising high school in Section B, should we include middle school? The statute does not say middle school.
Yeah, I think I
Let's
would
say-
not. I think I would just include I think it would map it to what the statute says. So if the statute does not necessarily say middle school, then I think if the board is choosing to purchase catastrophic insurance for those, that's fine. And if the board wants to add it to policy, you can, but it's not required that you add it to the policy. Does that make sense?
But can we enforce it if it's not in the policy?
There used to be two different kinds of policy up to middle school and then the high school. So the middle school was included in a different kind of catastrophic insurance program.
Well, what I'm familiar with is catastrophic insurance only kicks in after like $25,000. And in my experience, we've paid for both middle and high school.
Right, but the reason it was not included in the policy was because there's two different types of insurance. As far as the middle school was covered in catastrophic, but it was not written, so it was in a policy. It was just two different insurance policies.
Then can I ask if there were a reason for that?
And this goes back.
Well, I'm thinking of the catastrophic, that's because of North Carolina High School Athletic Association requires
Requires it.
that. But the middle school, it's not sanctioned under High School Athletic Association. So
Oh,
that's why it wouldn't be in there.
okay.
We just paying over and above. We're now doing what the law states with High School Athletic Association with athletics. So
Okay.
that's why I don't think you want to put middle school in it.
That's-
That's just what we do under the board. So
Okay.
I wouldn't want to put anything in there like.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Ellis. I think I would map it to the statute the way that the way that the language reads right now maps directly onto the statute itself.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, the legal references cited have been updated.
Are there questions for Mr. Hill? All right.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. The next policy is 4240/7312. Who's handling that one?
This policy is child abuse and related threats to child safety. So it revises the language in section A1 for clarity. Each slide, scroll down just a little bit, Mr. McQueen, right there. Thank you, sir. So you see there, under A1, where it strikes out contact with, and you puts in the words conduct with or involving a child. So inappropriate sexual conduct with or involving a child. And if you scroll back up, Mr. McQueen, quick right there. It also adds the abbreviations for the Department of Health and Human Services, DHHS, and the Division of Child Development and Early Education, DCDEE. And then it removes the Department of Health and Human Service, that division, and it puts in the DCDEE there. And you'll see a couple other times throughout where they've made that abbreviation. Scroll down, Ms. McQueen. Thank you, sir. It adds section D, duty to report licensed employees to the state superintendents of public instruction. And it also adds section H, which is child abuse and neglect information resources for students. So by adding those two sections, can you scroll back up just a little bit, Mr. McQueen? You can see that it made adjustments to those letters. Is it E and F, I believe, yes. D, E, F, and G. Yes. And there are the legal references. There's some updates there.
The questions?
Ma'am.
If there are none, we will go to policy 4300. And since since Dr. Farrell didn't move, is that you too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So in this student behavior policy, you see there in the very first paragraph, it adds in red, teachers, school-based administrators, parents, and law enforcement will be consulted when existing student behavior policies are revised or new such policies are created. That's it for that policy. Yep.
Other questions?
Ma'am.
Thank you. The next policy would be 4334/5035/7345, use of unmanned aircraft drones. Who's doing that one? Lindsay?
That one's gonna be me because use of unmanned aircraft and drones is everyone's favorite policy, I think. So this one is one, it's actually one that they had said that we've got a couple sets of edits, but they're not particularly extensive. But they're from both the spring and the fall edits from the School Boards Association. So if you'll scroll down, Mr. McQueen, the edits here really have to do with updating the language to be consistent with FAA guidelines. And so there's some additions there about regarding the remote identification of the drone, the unmanned aircraft, and there's some other revisions to subsection D there to again to conform this with FAA guidelines. And I think if you'll scroll down, yeah, the other edits here are all FAA guidance to make sure that those are all consistent and up to date. And then there is a reference to an update to the legal references, but other than that, I think those are the only changes.
Are there questions for Lindsay? Right, the next policy then will be 4400. Which
4400 is attendance. And it updates the language in subsection C2. Thank you, Ms. McQueen. So you see there's isolated order by the local health office or the state board of health, or isolation or quarantine that is required, state or local control measures. And that's talking about what would be considered an excused absence. Also, number 9 there. It's as the word inactive. Then at the very bottom, at the very end of the sentence, it as or, and it adds number 10, any other reason as approved by the board in a board resolution. And then it updates the legal reference and it updates other resources.
Are there questions? If not, thank you. We'll go on to 4700.
4700 is student records.
Yes, sir.
And it updates the name of the U.S. Department of Education office, and A9 is changed to Student Privacy Office. It updates the language in section F in accordance with the new general statute. It clarifies that records must be supplied to the new school within 10 days. It removes the reference in the section F to the Interstate Commission, as the commission has not adopted a different rule and is not expected to do so. And in K, it speaks specifically to the notification of parents and eligible students prior to the destruction of personally identifiable information in a student special education record. Special education records must be destroyed at the request of a parent if a student is no longer eligible to receive educational services. And a record of a student's name, address, phone number, grades, attendance record, classes attended, grade level completed, and the year completed may be maintained permanently. And so that section K, it speaks specifically to the requests of students identified as under EC and their records.
Other questions on policy 4700?
Do we have that ability to maintain permanent records permanently?
We do. There's a process right now. We work with a company called Scribbles. And Scribbles warehouse all of our records. Those that are not in a digital format, that are still in boxes, we pay monthly to have them uploaded to a digital format. And that's what I would say. I would be shocked if there's any school in the state or district in the state that does not use some sort of format that's very similar to that.
Those are the policies that we have under substantive changes. We have one policy left with minor updates. And that is policy 4270, 6145. Lindsay, are you doing that one?
Yeah, I'll do this one too. If you'll scroll down, Mr. McQueen, the changes here are simply to the legal references and other other resources references. So there's some updates to the location of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association handbook, the legal reference to some new statutory language or provisions, and then a change to a hyperlink for the report from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. So those are the only changes to this one.
All right. Are there questions for Lindsay? And by the way, thank you, Lindsay, for being here with us. I forgot to say welcome to you when I first started.
Oh, that's okay. I'm happy to be here. Sorry I couldn't be there in person.
Keeping us legal.
Trying my best.
All right. Is there a motion to refer these policies? I'm sorry.
I had another question, but you go ahead. I'll wait until you finish.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to just actually mention our policy on fighting, like to take a look at it, but I can wait until you finish that.
The motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there a motion that we refer these policies to the full board for approval to lay on the table for 30 days?
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Dutton and seconded by Mr. Dean that we recommend to the full board that we approve these policies for the first read and they lay on the table for 30 days. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We will refer these to the full board and recommend approval for first read. Now, Ms. Bullock, your question.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to address, I know we talked about in the last meeting, our policy on fighting and just having discussion about it. So I wanted to bring it up at this time so that we could maybe take a look, see what our options are, or just start to have the conversation so that we can address it, because it is a major issue that we're facing.
A policy on what?
On fighting.
Fighting.
And how we, yes, I'm sorry. And
okay. You said it, I just didn't catch it. I'm sorry.
Okay. And how we actually handle those situations and just kind of taking a look at it.
Would you like us to?
Yeah, I was gonna just say that what we could do is in our next policy committee meeting, I'll let Dr. Farrow go over elementary, middle school, high school, the behavior matrix. What we then could do is go over some data points. We've got so many, alternative to suspension programs now for fighting. So I think it'd be best if we went over that in some sort of committee meeting, because it wouldn't be a policy. It really would be in regs that we do our behavior matrix. So be glad to do that. That'd be an easier way so everyone can kind of see what we do and the options that we have. So
would that satisfy your questions, Ms. Bullock? Would that be
yes,
okay?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Thank you, Dr.
All right, and we'll ask you if you would make sure that's on the agenda for next month. Is there anything else to claim our attention? If not, thank you, each and every one of you for coming, and I declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
We're good. Ready? All right.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll call the Student Support Services and Operations Committee to order. I'll take a roll call real quick. Dr. Donovich Avis.
Here.
Ricky Jenkins. Dr. LaShonda Washington.
Here.
Evelyn Bullock.
Here.
At this time, we have a quorum, and I'll entertain our 2 agenda topics. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Leon Farrow to help us out with the introduction for our talks tonight.
All right. This will help. I'm sorry.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Committee Chair, board members, Dr. Ellis. The village update, the Village Males to Men Mentoring Program update. Today I will share with you, or this evening rather, we will gain a deeper insight into the Village Males to Men Mentoring Program. Mr. Tremaine, if you will move to the next slide, please, sir. We'll also provide and share updates concerning the village in the Males to Men Mentoring Program. Supporting links are attached to Village second semester timeline. Fiscal implications. The items listed below are events and activities that are planned for the second semester with an associated cost. Planned field trips, leadership summit, end of year recognition ceremony. Strategic priority, academic success, student-centered leadership, communication, and community. Next slide, please. I want to somewhat review our first semester timeline and things that we have accomplished. From July to August, we rolled out the Village Males to Men Mentoring Program. August through October, schools participated in the process to screen and select candidates and mentees. They also pushed forward with determining the site mentoring schedule for the second semester. October through December, mentor recruitment and mentor training. November through December, schools hosted formal rollout. Parents and mentees reviewed the expectations and activities for the Village Males to Men Mentoring Program. And at this meeting, each mentee was pretty much paired with the mentors that we have available. We'll talk a little more about that piece. Next slide, please. But just once again, a brief overview of or program at a glance for the review. Each comprehensive high school, including Tar River Academy, will host the village. Schools will serve between 12 and 15 students. A new cohort of students will begin each new school year in 9th grade, and that cohort of students will be supported throughout graduation. We're looking to serve and support young at-risk men who have leadership and academic capacity, but may not have the support, resources, or foundation to help them reach their fullest potential. We look to support males that are prone to economic, medical, employment, educational, and legal inequalities. The students have to be a first-time freshman. The village is not designed as a dumping ground for our most challenged students. And students who show an interest in career in the military, trade, or collegiate opportunities. Thank you. So our second semester, if you go back, Mr. Tremaine, please. Thank you. So our second semester timeline. Mentoring sessions started last week, the week of January 9th. January is considered National Mentoring Month, not only in Nash County Public Schools. February, I'm excited to move forward with a visit to a predominantly white institution, which I'm hoping to be Duke University and a HBCU. I'm looking forward to North Carolina Central University as an opportunity. March, we've already scheduled with Nash Community College to host our first annual leadership summit that is scheduled for March 2nd, 2023. As of April, middle school councils will submit rising 9th graders that will participate in the Village Males to Men Mentoring Program. This year, based on the timing, we had to include our high schools, which took a considerable amount of time, pretty much 6 weeks or a little longer, to identify rising ninth graders. I'm going to speak with the middle school counselors next Friday and bring them up to speed on what the screening process is and how we would like their involvement and their participation with selecting rising ninth graders. Some of these young men have been with them for 2, maybe 3 years, and they have a better idea or a greater understanding of who the village will better support as a first-time freshman. Here's just a brief roadmap. I won't go through it all here, but in terms of the need, designing a campaign strategy, a method to recruit and sustain volunteer mentors. We'll talk a little bit more about that challenge. Use the Village Males to Men mentoring program to address systemic issues in terms of inputs, tools, and resources. We'll work to locate and recruit volunteer mentors who understand the sense of urgency. Develop an active curriculum that features critical dialogue and relationship building between the mentor and the mentee. In terms of activities, we somewhat spoke about them, but I'll repeat a few. Recruitment of mentors and verification that they'll be suitable to work with our scholars. We will not put any mentors in front of our students unless their background check has been fulfilled and it has been completed. We also have paired with communities and schools where our young men would participate in a field trip on February 21st at Nash Community College, and that field trip will focus on literacy, financial literacy. There's an additional educational journey, March 21st, North Carolina Wesleyan, and that is March 21st. That's a college and career fair. Once again, we mentioned earlier that the Leadership Summit will take place Thursday, March 2nd, 2023 from 8:15 to 1:15, and I'm excited about the rotation of guest speakers that we're going to have, a keynote speaker, but most importantly, having some of our students engage and kind of flow and run the process. So I'm looking forward to them stepping up with that piece. Along with closure activities for the end of the year, the end of the year recognition ceremony will take place on May 23rd, Brown's Auditorium. And one critical piece that I think is very, very much needed is a program evaluation towards the end of this semester to make sure that we can tweak as we move forward. Big picture. No, my apologies. So outputs, work that we need to get done. Initially, we wanted to select 50 to 65 first-time freshmen that will be eligible to participate in the program. At this current time, our numbers are 46 mentees. Our goal is to recruit 30 volunteer mentors approved to serve. I still have some in the pipeline that are waiting to, the background screening is taking some time, but at this point, we only have 9 volunteer mentors. 90% of matches sustained during the program cycle. And then mentees will complete 70 hours of mentoring during the second semester. That's the goal. Big picture, successful transition to college and or university, military or workforce, develop and increase healthy identity of all mentees. And mentees build trusting relationships with staff and mentors. And then external factors, we actually were working on it today, Dr. Ellis. I had 2 of our mentors come in. We're always working on a call of action to recruit mentors that were volunteer mentors that be willing and able to serve. And today we were able to complete 2 sound bites that Mrs. Fiskus and Mrs. Johnson are going to share out via Facebook and other social media platforms. So I'm excited, but I'm also grateful for our two mentors that made the decision to help us out with that piece. Next slide, Mr. So here's just a brief story of where we are, mentor story. I'm gonna brag about, I actually had goosebumps at the first one, Southern Nash High School's formal rollout. I didn't quite understand, this is my 5th year with the district, understand where I was until I once again participated in Southern Nash rollout. Well, from day one, July 20th was our formal rollout, and Mr. Scott and Mr. Howard work. Why don't you get volunteer mentors for the other school? We don't need them. No, I'm gonna get you some, I'm gonna get you some, I'm gonna get you some mentors. Well, Mr. Howard, don't worry about us. We'll probably be able to sustain it. And so you can see he has more orange than blue. No gray, because gray represents volunteer mentors, but he actually has 11 in-house mentors. But the piece that gave me goosebumps, Dr. Ellis, is I found out that night that their mentors, their staff were students. And I'm saying, are you kidding me? Where else in America I hadn't seen that before? And I was like, whoa, we got something special here. So now that made more sense to me of why Mr. Scott was saying, Mr. Howard, we don't need any mentors. We're good, just worried about the other schools. The goal here is to increase the gray, get it as close to the blue as possible. You'll see we have 2 mentors, volunteer mentors for Tar River, 2 for Rocky Mountain High School. I just added the 3rd one for Nash Central, and 2 volunteer mentors for Northern Nash. Those numbers, like I mentioned earlier, will be modified. We do have some folk in the pipeline that are waiting to complete their background screening. Next slide, please. And so here are a few data points that we wanted to take a look at from last semester. And as we move through the second semester, here are some goals that the deans of students, the mentors, the admin team will help us to work out. The blue represents the percentage or the number of ODRs that a particular student had during the first semester. The orange represents 2As, unexcused absences that took place during the first semester. And then the gray represents first semester GPA. And so those are some of the conversations and goals that we'll be working towards during the second semester. And as we have our young men doing the end of the year recognition ceremony, this is where they'll be able to show either the blue decreased, I'm hoping, the orange decreased, and the gray grade point average increase. And that's what we're looking to attain. There's a particular young man last week at Northern Nash's rollout. I was going over Northern Nash with the young men that were in attendance. Day one, when you walk into high school, you walk in with a 4.0. You got a big surprise if you keep it up. You don't have to work your junior year and your freshman year trying to get the GPA back up. And so I was impressed and excited to see him a part of the village. And I shared that with his mom. Not just that, the young man who made a decision to mentor him was a recruiter, Navy recruiter for the past years at my years at Tar River Academy. And I said, man, well, that's all right, because I couldn't think of anyone else that would probably be willing and able to really move and guide that young man. So I'm excited about that piece. Next step, Mr. Slide. And so here's just a snapshot. I do not have Rocky Mountain High School here at this point. There's been some transition here in terms of the first semester, young men that did not have mentors. And so we've just had to make some adjustments, and before placing it there, I just wanted to have as much as I can for you. And so you'll see the breakdown, some data points here. And I'll continue to update that throughout this semester. And here are just a few pictures of your support. Thank you once again, Dr. Ellis, Dr. Farrell, for your leadership and your support with this mission and vision for Nash County Public Schools. Once again, associated costs aligned to the activities mentioned are currently being determined. I'm working on that piece, but it's a privilege to share this information with you. The superintendent presents this item for information only. Any questions that you may have? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would like to talk to you afterwards about serving as a mentor or getting more information.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yes,
that
sir.
do a sign. Already passed the background check.
Yeah, earlier on, last semester, I did quite a few mentor interest meetings. I believe it's the 27th or the 26th of this month where one of the local faith-based organizations already have about 12 that they were trying to get in before the winter break, but just with time, we just couldn't get it done. And so I'm hoping to walk away at least with half of the young men. So I'm excited about that piece as well.
Great job.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You may have said this, I'm sorry, Mr. Howard, and I missed it. Are you trying to match a student and a mentor for 4 years? Are you trying to match them for a semester or a whole year? What ideally?
In
how
a
would you
perfect
like
world,
it?
one mentor assigned to one mentee for 4 years. And in a perfect world, that goes beyond 4 years, that relationship happens for 30 or 40 years. And what I share with doing my mentor training, I say a lot of time you think it's the kid got the problem, but a lot of times, at least I've found, you're talking to a kid, that mentoring is reciprocated. You thought something wrong with the kid, but you feel better after the dialogue that's shared. So sometimes, you sow a seed, it comes back to you.
But if we were looking at like Westland, students there, where they might have a semester or a year, but maybe not that 4-year, that's not a fit for how this program needs to.
But we wouldn't turn it down. We wouldn't turn it down. Dr. Ellis and Dr. Farrell understands that for me it's the commitment. If you can't commit right now, maybe you could help us out down the road. But we don't want to have someone say they commit and then once again they set our young men up for failure. And so we do have someone that says, I'll sign up for a year. I know I could do a year, then we'll take that year and we'll move on from there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is that everybody? All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Agenda item number 3, Dr. Farrell.
This item is the Evolved Express Body Scanner School Weapons Search System. It's a weapon detection system that combines powerful sensor technology with proven artificial intelligence, otherwise known as AI, security ecosystem integrations, and comprehensive venue analytics to ensure safer, more accurate threat detection at an unprecedented speed and volume. The system has a single and dual lanes system. A single lane can scan 2,000 students in an hour, 500 students in 15 minutes. Dual lanes can scan 4,000 students in an hour, 500 students per lane in 15 minutes. The system is 10 times faster than metal detectors. The system is easy to break down and it's mobile. There are currently school systems in North Carolina using this system. Charlotte Meck and Guilford. Johnson County begins their installation in March. Edgecombe County Schools is considering this system as an option as well, and there's others that Mr. Brooks may speak about when he comes to give the presentation. We are considering this system at the following schools for 4 years at a total cost of $991,347.30. And the schools that we have initially looked at focused on our high schools, which are Tar River Academy, City, that's Rocky Mount Early College, where we're looking at single lanes for those schools, and Rocky Mount High School, Nash Central High School, Northern Nash High School, and Southern Nash High, where we would have dual lanes. The superintendent presents this topic as information only, and we're going to have Mr. Brooks Gearhart. He's an account executive for Alliance Technology Group. Come and do a presentation, and he will help field any questions that you may have at the end of his presentation. Mr. Gearhart?
Thanks. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. So we did put together a presentation for Dr. Farrow. I know he and some of his team have seen all of this. Obviously, main purpose is to give you guys some more information if you aren't familiar with this technology. As he said, so I'm Brooks Gerhardt. I work with Alliance Technology Group. Been with the company for about 3 years. We partner with Evolve Technology. So Evolve manufactures the hardware and software, and then Alliance works from a resale and then implementation, training, and then ongoing support throughout the 4 years. So our two companies work very closely together. And as Dr. Farrow mentioned, I was actually intimately involved in the Guilford County deployment. So if you have questions about that or have seen it in the news, more than happy to talk about that. So this presentation, we didn't include any videos because sometimes at school board meetings, they don't carry over on the systems, but would encourage you to just do a quick Google and see some full videos. We'll go ahead and get started. This is going to be pretty high level, and please cut me off whenever to ask questions. So we can go ahead. And we can skip through this. So Evolve, I'll just give you some background on them as an organization. They've been around since 2013. They've really been involved in school systems, I would say, for the past 3 years now, is kind of when that industry or market took off for them. And the reason is if we think about traditional screening processes in any situation, whether it's a school, a stadium, a hospital, historically, really the only way to do that was metal detection. We've all been through that, either at the airport or elsewhere. And, it's tedious, right? You got to remove everything. It slows everything down. And frankly, in a school system, it's just not feasible to do it. We've worked with a ton of districts that have actually, had issues. They go out and buy metal detectors. They use them for 5 or 6 weeks. Takes everyone an hour and a half to get to class, and they get pushed off to the side. So with what Evolve's doing is they're specifically looking for weapons of mass casualty. And so it's ignoring, harmless items like we all have on us with our, phone and wallet and keys. Everyone would walk straight through. Nothing would happen. You'd continue right on to class. If something is detected, then Evolve, on their tablets is showing you exactly where that threat is. That's handled off to the side. And the critical part of that is really with any other solution out there, you'd have to stop the line if you didn't know where or who you were searching, and keep walking them through until you determine what was causing the alarm. And that's why it's not feasible to do that in a school setting. You end up with the lines. So for that reason, it averages about 10 times faster than a traditional metal detector. Dr. Farrow talked about some of the numbers earlier. That's really how we figured out when we looked at your schools. We would talk to the principals, understand what entrances they used, how many students, and what the arrival curves were for buses. And that's how we calculate whether to use a single lane or a dual lane. Go ahead to the next slide. This is just a screenshot from one of the tablets, right? So these would be at the entrances of every school that Dr. Farrow mentioned. And this is exactly what I mean by the targeted search, right? So an alarm goes off. Now you don't begin that guessing game of why did that go off? The system's going to tell you clearly, you just need to look in this gentleman's bag, right? There'd be no reason to wand them, pat anyone down. You're not going to search someone's ankle if the alert goes off on their bag. This is also a big reason in school systems that we see Evolve becoming such a viable solution, from an equity standpoint, right? Everyone wants to make sure that everyone's going through doing the same thing and that you're only looking, or searching where those targeted alarms are. And this allows you to do this, right? What we see with a lot of other, systems out there is because there is no targeted search, they actually just end up doing random screening, right? So they're telling everyone to walk through, but they're just pulling every fifth person off to the side. And we're trying to avoid that, right? So we can go ahead to the next slide. If we just look at, why Evolve got started in this space, their founders were actually had family members and friends around when the Boston Marathon bombings took place, and they thought there's got to be a better way to screen thousands, tens of thousands of people quickly. And if you look at the history of mass casualty incidents, it's firearms and IEDs, right? That's the primary threat. So when Evolve looked at that, part of what's allowing them to do that targeted search is it's using that algorithm in the software to specifically identify slides and barrels on guns, canisters from that could be used as IEDs, large tactical blades, things of that nature, right? And as the world changes and technology changes, you guys would all benefit from having that software, right? So it's constantly updated. Obviously, guns are going to change, different threats are going to change, benign items are going to change. And so while the hardware is, stationary, it's the software that's continuously learning and being trained to determine threats versus non-threats. So as that algorithm improves from, obviously all of the systems out there, then you guys benefit over that 4-year period from those advances. Go ahead to the next slide. We talked a little bit about this, so we don't have to spend too much time on it, but like I just mentioned, the real critical part is that it's not a static piece of technology. It's constantly changing, and that's really key, right? You don't want to end up with something and then 2 years from now, there's the next best thing out there. This really gives you that ability to, as the world changes, the technology changes, and we want to make sure that that continues for the clients. You can go to the next slide. So this is an added benefit from Evolve, given that, right, obviously they're in different areas outside of schools. The Atlanta Falcons have it, the Panthers have it. There's tons of NFL stadiums that have this. You guys, there's a good chance you probably walked through this and didn't even realize what was going on. But all of that data is then captured, right? And you guys can learn from that. So, as this grows and right, this makes with the schools that we looked at here, while it might seem pretty manageable, say you add entrances, you add schools, now you can start seeing by school, right, how many people are coming in by entrance. So now you can staff accordingly. You can see what weapons were found, what percentage of weapons, what's the alarm rate. And all of that helps influence from a training perspective and then operations, right? If we know one school, there's significantly more weapons at that school than any other, well, maybe we have to address what's causing that issue, right? So this is the type of information that would be captured. Sensitivity levels, things of that nature are all manageable in here. Typically, the administrative staff has access to make changes, and then principals can view the information because that's how, they may change where the buses are dropping off in the morning if they are looking at these reports and it doesn't make sense to use the entrance that they're currently using. You can go ahead to the next slide. So again, this goes back to what Dr. Farrow said with a 4-year term. That's how Evolve goes to market. Again, it's a subscription. So as hardware changes, just like a car, for lack of a better term, right? You guys decide, 2 years in, we want to upgrade our hardware. You could. Either way, the software, which is, I would argue, the most critical piece of this, that's what's being supported and maintained. And then we've also included, on-site support services, training, and what we refer to as go live support. So we don't want to leave you guys out. This is not a situation where the systems get dropped off, set up, and we say, have a good one. We generally spend a lot of time. I was in Guilford County for a month straight when they deployed it. We want to make sure that you guys are operating this well, that you're benefiting from what we've learned as an organization and from our other clients about what works well and what doesn't. So that's all included as well. Then I'll just give you a few examples, I think, that are coming up next of some districts that are relatively close by that have it. This was actually very recently. This happened while I was down here. with Dr. Farrow looking at your schools, and Guilford called us. I mean, we obviously keep in touch with them all the time. Essentially what happened was, it was right after winter break. A student came back and they detected it right away, right? It was a firearm in their backpack. That's actually the second time that's happened at Guilford since we've installed it, right? And it's only been there since the beginning of the school year. At Dudley High School, they actually found one in the fall. And that's just to show that, right, it's accomplishing exactly what they're wanting it to do. You stop, the potential threat before it advances into the building, and you're isolating, that student or staff member, right? It depends on district of whether they screen staff or not. But you're isolating that and removing them from the rest of the students. Everyone else is continuing on to class, and you're dealing with that off to the side and potentially preventing, some issue down the road. You can go to the next one. This is just another example of a school system, that was written the other day. But as Dr. Farrow mentioned, Charlotte Mecklenburg has this. They actually have an interesting story. They had a really big problem, with dozens of firearms were being found. And I think that this year, they did all of their high schools in the spring of last year, and then over the summer, they did all of their secondary schools. So that's Evolve's largest customer. They have it in, I think, 68 schools, and there's like 170 systems. They've significantly reduced the amount of weapons being found and even brought to campus. The other thing that I'll note is, everyone reads in the news, and this is just, my perspective. You read about, unfortunately, mass shootings happening. Really what we're hearing when we're spending time with, Dr. Farrow and talking to principals is it's typically, some incident that really didn't have to happen. It's students have a weapon on them in school, and then some argument breaks out, and because they have a weapon on them, they use it, right? They're not going with the intent to do it. And that's a lot of the issues that we see in the schools. So if we can prevent the weapon from being in the school in the first place, and then an incident like that happens, well, then the mission's being accomplished of minimizing, your risk profile. You can go to another one. This was very recent. I would actually encourage you guys, on your free time, Google Atlanta Public Schools Evolve. They just deployed it a month ago. So all of Atlanta Public Schools have this. We actually did Clayton County, Georgia, which is Southeast Atlanta. We did 27 schools there with 65 systems over the summer. And, I was talking with the chief of police down there the other day. What he likes about it, and what a lot of people benefit from, is, right, you don't want to be finding things, but now they're finding all of the things that they don't want in their schools in the parking lots. So he has his security staff go out and do a sweep, right? And because students don't necessarily know what this is looking for versus what it's not. So we've incidentally seen districts have a drastic reduction in like drug use, vapes, all of those things, because we don't advertise. And this is part of what we would work with you guys on. We don't advertise specifically what it is and isn't doing generally, because from a security standpoint, you don't want to divulge that to bad actors. But obviously we're transparent with you all about what that is. And we've shared that with Dr. Farrow. So anyway, I would recommend Googling it. Just the reason I say that is there's a couple great news articles that have about a 2 or 3 minute video where they interview principals, police, students. So it's just good to get feedback to hear it from all those, types of stakeholders. So in terms of what we've done to help out Dr. Farrow and team, is we've evaluated the schools, right, and spoken with the principals, determined what would be needed. We've done those site surveys. We have, pictures of that and an overall design of how this deployment would work. And so from there, then, in conversation with you all, questions that you have, we would, work to finalize an agreement. And then after that, our team really, that's when things really get ramped up, and deployment plans are mapped out, training schedules, implementation, all of that stuff would be planned after that. So we're kind of at the point where we know what's needed. And then, assuming, you all have conversation about it and make a determination on the direction you want to go, then we would obviously be back here to partner with you and have a successful deployment moving forward. So I think that's it on the presentation. Again, that I'm happy to get into more detail about anything. I just wanted for now to give you guys a brief overview. Oh, this is in here too. Dr. Farrow shared it earlier, but this is how we obviously got to the number that he shared, right, was through all those site surveys. So this is just the various SKUs of what would be needed. And yeah, this is for the high schools. And then he asked me to just put it together for the middle schools as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I sort of kind of have one, and I said sort of kind of, because you touched on it a little bit. In this process, now that the screening is going great in some of these large school districts, are they finding more native activity actually happening in parking lots, or is there now focus on the officers controlling that?
So that's just one example. I can speak generally about it because we obviously do keep in touch with all of our clients. I would say that that's not the normal thing, right? I think it does happen on occasion. I would say what is common is in the first month of deployment for that type of situation to happen, because people realize that this isn't going away. This is here to stay. That's the challenge you run into with random screening anywhere, right? You text your friend, hey, they're using metal detectors today, and they, throw it somewhere. Or the operator fatigue, sets in and you're not actually really screening people. So once people realize that this is an everyday thing, this is, how I go to school, then you see a drastic reduction. But that initial period, yes, I would say it's probably more common to find things that were like left on the bus or outside or somewhere than actually for it to get detected. Because the kids were smart, right? Again, go back to their friend on the first bus text them and said, this is happening. And they try to avoid it. I would say that's I will say once they are in place, at least what we're told is schools typically do see a drastic reduction in even what is being found, right? Because people just stop bringing it. Yeah.
One more part of that. And I know we talked about high school and middle,
Mhm.
but in light of the recent news, are there any schools doing this in elementary? And is it, hate to say user friendly, but I hate for kids to feel like they're going to prison to go to school.
Yeah, so I would say it's uncommon until now to do elementary schools. If you just look statistically at like where incidents happen, it's high schools, then middle schools, then elementary schools. Obviously, what happened up in Newport, news was horrible, and I think that's having people reconsider. I can tell you, Johnson County will be the first one that I know that's doing their elementary schools. They're actually doing all 46 of their schools. So, but to answer your question a little bit further, I think that elementary schools are probably actually one of the easier scenarios to do this. If you just think about a screening process, right? There's always false alarms. Elementary students carry the least. High school and middle school students carry the most, right? So for an elementary school student, I don't necessarily think, I have my own views on whether they should be in elementary schools, but from a screening process, I think would probably be one of the easier scenarios to do. Just from an operations standpoint. And there's other things that districts do to make it right. We don't want people to think that they're going through TSA every day. Like that is what we're trying to avoid. So like Guilford had like art contests and stuff and did you can customize those graphic panels. So like they're putting like their mascots on it, and there was like a race between school principals of who could do it fast. Stuff like that is all possible, and that obviously makes it like look a little bit nicer. But it's really about if we can get people to get through and get a good operations plan in place, it becomes seamless. I was over in Guilford a couple weeks ago, actually taking some districts to see it, and they have it down to a science. There's no line. Everyone's straight in every day. The teachers are on it. They know what they're doing. And frankly, you probably all know, at least, the folks working in the schools, who's going to complain about it no matter what it is, right? Like that's always the case. Once people go through it for a week, the first week can be challenging. It's something new. It's going to be chaotic. Once you get past that, it seems to go pretty smoothly.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Great. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Someone.
Second. We're done.
Good job.